You're a sinner. So's I. I know what it's like. You know, my dad told me all about sin. He preached against it night and day. Long nights he put the strap to me as he had me kneeling on the cold floor. But I turned against him and his preaching. I went the other way. That was wrong. I should have listened to him. You know, he could quote a good book, my dad could. The man that committeth adultery and the adulteress shall surely be put to death.
Welcome to Highlander Rewatched, the podcast where each and every week we watch another Highlander episode and talk about it. I'm one of your rewatchers. I'm Keith.
I'm Kyle.
This is Eamon.
Let's jump right into this week's episode. This is episode 20, Avenging Angel. This first aired Saturday, May 1st, 1993. It was directed by Paolo Barzman. He's a French director. He does 13 episodes of Highlander. I also looked him up. I guess he came to America at some point. His parents were blacklisted.
Yeah, in the McCarthy era.
Yeah, which that was kind of interesting. Yeah.
Pretty interesting, yeah.
And then the writer was Fabrice
Ziolkowski.
Yep, he's back. He did For Evil's Sake.
Fabrice, isn't that somebody?
I think Fabrice is one of Nick Kroll's characters.
Yeah. on Comedy Bang Bang.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Crash Services Coordinator.
Yeah.
The guest stars in this episode, Martin Kemp. He's the villain, Alfred Cahill. He was one of the stars of BBC's long-running soap opera EastEnders.
Yeah, EastEnders. Barry off EastEnders.
Right? EastEnders.
And then you have Elaine, who's played by Sandra Nelson. She was in Wolf of Wall Street, which is
Really?
crazy. Yeah, like that's a pretty big movie.
Huh. Yeah, that is a big movie.
Yeah. And DS9.
Ooh, nice.
Who does she play in DS9?
I didn't write that down. I gotta start doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just know that she was in it.
So the IMDb episode description for this episode is: an insane man, newly turned immortal, believes he has been reborn in order to do God's work by killing sinners.
Great. It opens with a sign that says Jacques Demolay and then a bunch of French that I don't know how to read.
It says he lies here.
Okay.
This is his burial place.
And we'll find out who he is later in the episode.
Yep.
But it has a Cahill here, and he's like crying and...
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing at this place.
He's giving himself good insight to go meet a prostitute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a cool setting. This place is like a really neat set piece, I guess. I mean, it's not a built set, but that's a location. It's a real. This is a really cool location. They're called locations when they're real. I don't know. It's got this neat like backlit cross in the background. It's got a lot of ambiance to it. It's neat.
Is this the actual place, do we think?
I'm going to assume it is.
Huh.
Which place do you mean, Eamon?
The tomb of Jacques Demolay.
I'll bet money that it is. Why not?
I mean, they get a lot of really good locations. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. So he's like kneeling in front of the cross. He prays. He wants God to protect him, and he's trying to be good.
He wants to protect him from venereal disease, apparently. 'Cause he's
So
again, going for prostitutes.
yeah. So the next scene, we see this guy at a bar, but this is like unlike any bar I've ever seen. It looks like they took a hospital cafeteria and put up like a Coors Light sign, and we're like,
Yeah.
it's a bar. Yeah. it's got like a shitty laminate floor, like weird, like vertical blinds. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, it's super weird.
It's very unappealing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a family establishment.
No. So you have Cahill here talking to this woman about his military service.
Yeah, he says he was part of the SAS Commandos, which is the Special Air Services, which are kind of like the British like special ops.
Yeah, they're like the elite of the elite in Britain.
So he says something interesting here. He's telling her like a war story, and he's like, "Oh, I was all over the place." He was like, "I was in Iraq." He's like, "I've never gotten a scratch," and I was curious. Two things: is he not immortal yet? Or was he immortal then and didn't realize it?
That's a good question.
And also, we'll talk about it in the next scene when he encounters Duncan a little more, because I want to get more into kind of how that interaction plays.
But anyway, so he's describing his military career, and she's like, "Okay, buddy, come on, let's get down to business." And the pimp starts to get upset about this in the back. He's kind of giving him the mean mug.
And then Cahill just like flips his lid and is like, "Are you calling me a liar, bitch?"
And he
this is
slaps her.
Yeah. It's pretty awful to watch.
And then goons start getting involved, I guess, to protect this woman, and he wrecks them all.
Right.
So apparently he was not telling tales. He was, in fact, some form of badass.
Yeah. And then he goes to further teach this woman a lesson or whatever his thing.
Yeah, he's like going to like
hit her some more.
Yeah.
And she stabs him in like the gut or the chest or whatever.
Yep. And he stumbles out.
Right. So he stumbles out of this bar and he ends up stumbling past Duncan's car, and Duncan gets the buzz. And this is where I'm like, wait a minute, what's happening here?
Oh, right.
We've never seen Duncan meet a non-immortal that will become like a preemie,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
before and get the buzz.
Right.
We do get the idea that maybe he can sense. They deal with that in some later seasons. That maybe he senses people that are like destined to become immortal. But they've never paired that with a buzz. Even in those later seasons where we know he can get this like feeling. So he gets the buzz. So that led me further to be like, well, is it because he's gonna die that he gets like I don't know at what point it's activated, or again like he mentioned earlier, he never got hurt in Iraq, like never got a scratch.
Yeah.
At some point in his war service, did he die and not realize it?
Yeah.
Came back to life, and now he's immortal. And this whole time, he's never realized it. And this is the first time he knows he's been, like, mortally wounded.
That's possible, but I think we're doing that work
Maybe.
for the show.
Yeah, also, this is the first time, it's not just that he's seeing a mortal who's destined to become an immortal. He's seeing them in their dying moments.
Right, so
like
I guess
this guy is about to croak when Duncan sees him.
I guess then I'm just curious, when does the immortality kick in?
Right.
I think imminent death appears to be our metric so far. I think that's what I'm most comfortable with.
By this episode, anyway. Yeah.
I'm going to go with my theory. I like the idea that he was immortal before and didn't know it. I kind of like that idea.
Yeah.
So Duncan chases him down.
Yeah.
He leaves his car in the middle of the street, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, everybody!" Like everyone's honking at him, and he goes chasing after.
And he's kind of like, "I don't know what to do. I'm just going to leave my car." Yeah.
Duncan goes straight for stealing the guy's wallet.
Yep.
And discovers like his ID and his identity.
Yeah.
And finds his military ID as well.
Right. So this guy wakes up and he thinks that this is like a holy miracle or something like that. He's been resurrected by God.
And Duncan is the Archangel Gabriel for some reason.
Yeah.
I think it's a little weird that they chose to make him the Archangel Gabriel, only because in the previous episode, Eye of the Beholder, the character's name is Gabriel.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, another Gabriel? Like,
We're still doing this?
Yeah. There's like a weird trend with a lot of these episodes we've been watching where like a piece from the previous episode is in the next episode, but it's just like a different like,
where did it happen
twist.
before?
So like in these recent ones, you have one episode with one of Duncan's immortal lovers, and then you have the next episode, it's that again.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
There's another example that I can't recall at the moment, but it's
Yeah, that
weird.
is interesting.
Yeah. So he thinks Duncan's an angel, and Duncan's just kind of like trying to coach him through, like, you don't know what's going on, you know, you're an immortal. So he's going to try to hold his hand through this, like he did with Joan Jett, I guess, a little bit.
Cahill escapes, and then Duncan and Tess are on the barge, and Duncan is doing some sleuthing to find out what's going on with Cahill. And so he busts out his stupid laptop, and Tess is like, "Oh, so you're hacking on the computer again?" It's like,
What? That killed me. It's like, what the fuck is this?
and-
you're hacking on the computer again.
And then Duncan's like, well, it's either that or fill out 20 forms and wait 6 months. And it's like, wait, what forms do you fill out to get personal information on other people? Like, I don't understand what form.
Yeah.
Like, what information is he looking for that you just, like, request that from people?
Yeah. Maybe military records?
Is
I
that
don't know.
public?
It depends.
I don't know.
There's certain like freedom of information. Well, that's the United States. It's
And
like
this
the
is-
Freedom of Information Act. I don't know what France's version of that would have been.
And
in
this would be
1992.
Britain, too, I guess. for
Yeah,
this guy.
he's not even in the right country.
He's not even in the right country. This is
Yeah.
so, like, I don't know what game he's playing, but he's
know
he's a
either.
master hacker.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he master hacks the British government.
Master hack.
So he hits a bunch of buttons. He's like, beep, boop, beep, boop. And it's like, access denied. He's like, It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, and meanwhile, Tessa is on the phone with an old friend of hers named Elaine, and they're going to meet, and they haven't spoken for years and
Right.
years and years.
Teenage interior decorator Elaine.
So Duncan ends up finding like this information because he's like, you know what? He's like, there was a code like a code on his car, like military service card.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, it's like, you remembered that? Like,
Yeah.
how does he remember any of this stuff? And he's like, let me put that in.
Also, it was like really dark when he was looking at
Yeah.
that card. It was like pitch black.
So who knows what he's entering this code
Yeah.
into? Like what government agency he's broken into to like
Yeah.
where you can type
That he's
in.
hacked them, and now the interface allows him to type in this code.
Right.
Yep.
So it tells him that he was honorably just discharged for failing a psychological exam.
And Tess says, so that means he's crazy.
And he's like, it's like, maybe not. Like, that's not what that means.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, like, let's, like, also chill.
yeah.
It's like, it's a big leap, and it's also very insensitive.
To people who, you know, maybe this guy just has, like, PTSD. Or...
yeah.
So she brings up an interesting point, like, that the shock of becoming immortal must do a number to you.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting to consider. Yeah. And then she's like, well, what does that do to someone who's already insane? And actually, I kind of wish they didn't make him insane to begin with. Like, I wish that the immortality was, like, fed into these, like, other... Like, he already has, like, a fairly extreme belief system, it would seem.
Yeah.
And that this immortality thing, like, confirms everything. And he's like, like, I was always right. Then we're off to the races with the story. I don't know. I think that would be more compelling than him just being an insane person that is now immortal.
Right.
Like, I wish that the immortality, like, affected him in some way.
Well, it does turn him into the Avenging Angel.
Right.
True. The titular Avenging Angel. Yeah. So then we cut to the bar, and the pimp in the first bar, Bettini, enters, and he is talking to the lady of the night who stabbed Cahill. And he's like, yeah, well, they didn't find Cahill's body yet. Bettini tells her to go out and get some hours in, basically. So she goes out to the car that's waiting for her.
And the driver, turns out, is dead. And then Cahill hops in, and he chokes her.
In broad daylight on a public street.
And takes her, I guess she has like a little black book with all her Johns in it. And he's like, this is going to be helpful. So that's like his like kill list now.
Yeah.
Also, I did just a little bit of research. I was curious about what prostitution is like in France.
Okay, he just did a little light digging.
Yeah, just a little light digging.
French prostitutes. What do I get?
Just want to get into the mind of the character. Oh no, I guess it is. It's weird. It is legal, but it's the same way in like America that like it's illegal for underage kids to buy cigarettes. Like it's not illegal for them to smoke, but it's illegal for them to buy it. Like, and so you're allowed to be a prostitute, but it's illegal to advertise in certain venues, and you can't be in like public places. It's illegal to be a pimp. You're supposed to pay. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of very like nuanced rules about. Like it seems like it's not looked upon favorably, but they think it's like your right to do it. So that seemed to be the gist of it.
Yeah.
Let us know if you've been with some French prostitutes, and if there was any formalities. Did you fill out an I-9 tax return thing?
Yeah.
If we have any French creeps in the audience, just
Or if you just want to write us about any paperwork you've done,
Right.
just send us that email.
so now we cut to interior decorator Elaine's apartment. She's not an interior decorator, in fact, and she is seeing one of her clients out.
She gives this client like a pink rose that she has. She puts it in his lapel. Then he's off, and it turns out Cahill is waiting in the hallway.
Not before this man, he knows that she's got a friend coming, so he's like, oh, maybe we can all just have a three-way.
Ugh.
It's just like,
so creepy.
Stop. Stop.
So Cahill follows this guy downstairs,
Yeah.
and then he's like, how was the whore? Like, and he grabs this dude by the neck and just like chokes him out while like screaming scripture at him. He screams some Leviticus at him.
Well, then I like how after he's done killing him, it's almost like a call out. Like he goes Leviticus like at the end, and then he like drops the mic. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like a good move.
That's his rapper name,
Yeah.
Leviticus.
Leviticus.
So also while he's like screaming the scripture at this guy, he reveals some stuff about his past. He says that like his father would beat him, and also was, I guess, a staunch God supporter. He was in this guy was into God. I don't know.
A God supporter. Yeah. So then Duncan and Tessa come in, and Duncan, like, I don't really get this. He like seems like he senses something, And then he goes to the stairs and sees the dead body.
He looks off into the distance. He's like, hold on, and he's just staring off, and then he just rushes over there. It's like, what is this? Like
he doesn't. It's like, where do I go? What's my line?
Yeah.
What do I do?
He doesn't like look at the body. Like it's weird.
Yeah, and it's not like the body's hidden or anything. Like they were going to see that in a second, in 2 seconds, but he like pauses the action. It's not like the foot was sticking out of a closet or something. Like it's really weird.
It was weird. So they find this body, and then they go up to Elaine's, and Duncan notices on the body the rose, and then he sees the roses in her apartment.
Right. And we find out, so Richie is not in this episode, I believe.
No, he's in Amsterdam.
He's in Amsterdam. We know what Richie's doing in Amsterdam.
A whole lot
Weed and prostitutes?
Yep.
Ordering seafood by accident in Amsterdam restaurants.
What are these muscles? I thought I was at a gym.
He's in his workout gear.
Sorry.
That's amazing.
Tessa is oblivious to the fact that her friend is a call girl.
Right.
Yeah, and like Duncan finds all this out by talking to the concierge a bunch.
Right, and he also finds out by talking to someone downstairs that someone matching the description of Cahill was seen down there.
Where are the police in this episode?
Good question.
Thank God they're not around.
Though
Duncan,
slow it up.
Yeah, because Duncan, once again, steals evidence. He steals the rose off the body, which, like, linked to them. It's like, once again, you're just tampering with the scene, Duncan. You gotta stop.
I think he took the rose from her room and just said, I found this rose in her room that's like the one they found on what's-his-face. I think that's what happened.
Yeah, probably. Maybe he doesn't take it from the body.
Okay, that's better. Because it's just like, come on, Duncan.
Yeah, that's what I thought happened too. I was like, wait a minute. But he has stolen evidence in the past.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention, like, why does Duncan link these two things at all? Like, I mean, how perfect of a description could this have been for Duncan to be like, oh, that's probably that Cahill. Like, what are you talking about?
Well,
like,
if they said a British guy, that would have gotten you a lot of the way there. You are in France.
That's true.
Duncan's British. I mean, like, well, he's Scott. A bit like, I don't know. This seems like like, why does Duncan think these two things are connected? Like, he has no reason to think Cahill was a murderer. Like, he's just like, oh, there's some misguided immortal out there who's delusional about stuff. But he didn't know Cahill was a bad guy. He knew nothing about it.
Or the connection of the prostitutes.
Exactly. Like, it's like out of nowhere. And it's like, this woman, or whoever he talked to, was probably like, it's like a 5'8" dude. He had, like, kind of light brown hair. Maybe he was British. And he's like, oh, it's fucking Cahill. Like, it all comes together. It's like, what? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. It's a bigger leap than I thought. But of course, as soon as Duncan tells Tessa that her friend is a prostitute, she, like, she is pissed.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, this person, fuck her. It's not great.
So Tess wants to talk to her friend, but I guess she's not answering her phone or whatever. Like, I think she said she was going to leave town. But then Tess is like calling her and like leaving messages. She's like, she's back. She's just not answering. And it's like,
how do you know she's
that?
back? Yeah, I don't get that.
But she's like really fucking pissed. Should we play this clip or not?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so Tess is pissed as shit at her friend.
What am I going to say to her?
What do you want to say to her?
I know what you want to hear. But it's okay. That I understand. But it isn't okay.
Tessa, she hasn't killed anyone.
Yes, she has. She killed a good friend of mine. A young, intelligent, lovely. She had so much, and she became a whore.
Ugh.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Rough. So
judgy.
Really judgmental. Also, I guess we find out that Duncan's views on prostitution are pretty light. He's like, she didn't kill anybody.
We've seen Duncan banging prostitutes.
Oh, that's right. I guess so. So he's totally cool.
Duncan in a harem has appeared at least once, maybe more than once. He is obviously down for this.
Yeah. Well, Tessa's coming down hard on Elaine.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Elaine does get a visit from the same pimp from earlier, and this guy is such a dick.
Yeah.
This guy basically threatens to just like let this serial killer get her if she doesn't bang him right then and there.
Yep.
It's really unseemly.
Yeah.
Tess finally meets up with Elaine at her apartment. She's like, oh, I just got back. She's like, I was going to call. It's like, yeah, right. But Duncan leaves Tess and Elaine to talk.
Yeah.
And Duncan goes outside where he sees Cahill like preaching on the streets.
Right.
And he's kind of watching from a distance. And also, Macaroni's got like two of his goons waiting in a car, and they're watching Cahill as well.
Yeah, and this was confusing. He has two sets of goons watching, like at two different points.
Yeah.
Like they're at a stairwell and two people are at the bottom and two people are at the top. It's really confusing.
Yeah.
Duncan's kind of telling Cahill about all the immortal stuff, and Cahill's just not really listening.
Right.
No, he thinks that Duncan now is like some kind of like tempter or something, trying to lead him away from his true path.
So Duncan makes a really interesting comment. This guy, Cahill, keeps referring to his father beating him. And Duncan is like, the Lord had nothing to do with your stepfather beating you.
Yeah.
And the line they cut that's in the script is Cahill goes, how did you know he was my stepfather? And I thought that was a really, like, I wish they didn't cut that line. Like, that's another interesting thing. Like, Duncan has this weird insight that, like, oh, you're probably an orphan or whatever. Like
all of us.
Like all of us. Which I thought was a pretty cool little thing.
And this guy is just a loon. He's just going like, oh, and his belt whistled in the wind as he attacked. It's like kind of sad.
So we find out that Cahill actually killed his stepfather for
Right.
beating him. He's like, So Cahill thinks Duncan is the devil now and takes off. But then Pepperoni's men show up.
And karate fight.
And karate fight again.
Enter karate fight.
Which this fight has the distinction of having, I think, the best ball kick the show has seen.
Yeah, it's like they just took footage from like America's Funniest Home Videos. And we're like, here we go.
It's time to kick some
Boing.
nuts. Yeah.
Well,
we should try to make a GIF or something
Oh,
of this
yeah.
ball kick. It's wonderful.
So Cahill escapes. Then we're back at the barge with Duncan, Tessa, and Elaine. And Elaine's basically like, listen, I don't need your help. So I'm going to go to Stromboli and get my own help. And Duncan's like, fine.
Fine, beat it.
Don't get yourself killed. Like, I don't care. It's like, what is this attitude,
He has like
man?
a temper tantrum.
And like Duncan gets upset. He's like, oh, I could have taken his head before. Like, blah, blah, blah. It's like, when? How? Well, no, you couldn't.
So
Yeah.
I guess he's referring to like, I could have killed him like essentially when he had done nothing wrong. Like in
Yeah.
that church, he's like, I should have killed him then. It's like, no, because
You were on holy ground and he had done nothing wrong.
Right.
So one interesting thing in this little bit where Duncan's like, oh, I should have killed him before. Tess is like a voice of reason, and she's like, like enlightened societies don't kill the insane, like they treat them. And then Duncan's response is like, nah, like it's like fuck it.
There's
like,
only one way to treat this
like,
man.
It's like
Yeah.
you he's insane. It's like what? Like again, I know that he's doing terrible things.
Yeah, he's
but
dangerous,
I
but-
don't know.
yeah.
It's a weird thing again with Duncan's barometer of shit. Like,
Yeah.
with Ursa a couple episodes ago in The Beast Below, he was like, hands off. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not fighting you. Like,
Yep.
Ursa, like, we got to talk this out, man.
Yeah.
And
Even
now
though
he's
you
just
murdered the manager.
Yeah.
Mr. Manager is
Yeah,
splat.
Mr. Manager is dead.
right.
It's like,
And in this case, he's like, no. Like, this is
this
ends now.
motherfucker, I'm putting him down. Leviticus.
Is it just because Duncan's really sexist? This guy killed a woman.
Maybe.
Oh, it might be. Yeah, I could totally see that.
And he just doesn't give a shit about Mr. Manager.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, Duncan really knows nothing about this. Well, I guess he knows more now, but like, this
Yeah.
guy definitely has like a troubled past. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like his character is actually a little sympathetic. I mean, like, he was an abused child. He seems to have he's like
And he
probably
has,
got
like,
PTSD.
yeah.
Like he was in war, like the wars. It's like, I don't know. This guy's fucked.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Duncan just
Duncan's
does,
like, and I'm gonna kill him.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so Duncan,
Duncan throws down with Alfredo.
yeah, he takes he takes Elaine back. Alfredo comes and starts shit, and he gives Duncan 5 seconds to leave.
5 seconds. Do we
5
play this on?
seconds.
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
Spaghetti Monster wants Elaine to come with him and thinks Mac is like a rival pimp trying to muscle in.
And you think you can just walk in here and try to take over? You're trying to put the move on me. Shut up! You're trying to put the move on me, Dominique Bertini.
It's not like that.
Well, I think it is. You have 5 seconds to get out of here. Okay.
1, 2,
he is throwing
3,
lychees into the air.
4. Drop it. Drop it. Elaine's retired. Now, when you've got time to think about it, you'll realize that's for the best.
I want him to honk his nose. He's got the guy on the ground. So he does this countdown. He's throwing like lychee nuts, like the little like Asian fruits,
Yeah.
into the air. Then he throws one at the guy's face and like disarms him, and like that's like the sneak attack.
Yep.
Like whoop, like got ya.
Leechy attack.
Also, like Duncan's entire persona in this scene is completely out of character. Like or at least
He's acting like real cool and like saying
it was
weird,
like it's somebody watched like a Bruce Willis movie the night before they wrote the episode, and we're like, oh, like a wisecracking smart ass like hero. It's like that'll be Duncan. Like it's like what? Like because he's so serious in the rest of the episode, and then in this one he's just like cracking jokes and being like, I got this. Like
like I feel like it was good that they decided to lighten Duncan up a little bit, but their barometer once they made that decision just like was inconsistent.
Yeah.
Because like he was clearly too stoic earlier in the season, but now it's just like, hey, which Duncan are we getting? Are we getting like practically clown Duncan or like scream what you don't do Duncan?
Especially in the context of this scene, like this guy is like master
He's
pimp,
armed,
and he's like, you fucking whore, like you get on the streets and whore for me, and Duncan's like, then Duncan's just cracking jokes. It's like, what is the tone of the scene?
I want to go over some things that Bettini says about Elaine.
Oh God, this is
because
amazing.
They're awful. He's like, when I found her, she was waiting tables, and he says this and he says that, and he says the waiters couldn't keep their hands off her ass.
The full line is she smelled like grease, and the waiters couldn't keep their hands off her ass.
Also, in a previous conversation Elaine has with Tess, like she really hated being a waitress. Like she was like, well, I came to Paris thinking I could be like a hotshot designer, and she's like, but that didn't work, and like, what else could I do? Right. Then sell my body. And it's like, huh? Like, and it really just came down to like, I was a waitress, but I didn't like it. So I guess like, let's open the poos up.
Oh my God.
Oh God.
Bettini's a slime ball. He is a shitty fettuccine.
So after Duncan disarms Fettuccine, he and Elaine leave. And they kind of miss Cahill, who's, I guess, coming up in the elevator.
He comes up in the elevator, and they're taking the stairs. It's like a wacky Scooby-Doo sequence.
So when Macaroni comes out, Cahill confronts him and murders him. Duncan comes up, but he's too late to save him.
Why doesn't Bettini shoot Cahill? He has a gun. Did Duncan
Great
take
question.
the bullets
He
out?
took the bullets out.
Okay.
Duncan takes the bullets and puts them in his pocket on his way out. The
I
door.
didn't catch that. There you go. That sucks for
And so
Bettini.
then another just really harsh line happens because Elaine is like, after Duncan saves, he's like, oh, like, you know, I really wish I could, the thing like I missed out on is like, I wish I could have like a guy like you. And he's like, well, you still could. It's okay to like change who you are or whatever. And then she's like, no one wants to settle up with a used up whore.
Yeah,
It's
Jesus.
like, oh, fuck.
This episode is problematic. I want to say one more thing about Bettini being murdered. So, like, he screams, and Duncan and Elaine still have to get out of this apartment building. So, like, they're going down the steps, and then, like, somebody has heard this scream. It's like a grandfather with his, toddler, grandson. So he hears this blood-curdling scream. Mac and Elaine act like they didn't hear it, or they're talking about something else. He takes his grandchild and, heads up to, where there's this obvious, incident. I'm like, why are you bringing your child, towards this, horrible incident?
And Duncan doesn't act inconspicuous at all because this guy starts walking towards him and he just grabs Elaine. He's like, uh-oh. What do you want
for dinner, honey?
Yeah,
or
he
whatever.
scoots her away. It's like, what's happening here?
Run from rigatoni.
Yeah. So that was weird. And also that line she says is awful.
Yeah, so at this point, Cahill is back at the church and he's decided. He's like, McLeod must die. Also, how does he know his name? Is that ever...
I think there's a lot of dialogue that happens off screen in that confrontation they have when he's preaching on the street.
Okay.
Right.
Because he says I'm tired of hearing about the gathering and all this shit.
That's true.
And it's we don't really get to see that.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's going on here because this is the fourth or fifth time maybe in one of these episodes that there's been some woman who up until recently has been relatively hostile to McLeod. It's just but my biggest regret is I'll never have a man like you. It's everyone has to love McLeod by the end of an episode, and it's really...
And he
it's puzzling.
Yeah, he spat at her 5 minutes ago about oh, if you don't want my help, then fine. Yeah. So it's he hasn't even been that nice to her.
Yeah.
I don't know.
At the barge, Cahill shows up. Again, I don't know how he found it, but he did. And he confronts Tess just lets him in. Or does he push his way in? Sorry.
No, she just opens the door for him.
Yeah,
Like,
but I guess she doesn't know who he is or anything.
Yeah.
So Tess lets Cahill in, and he's going to kill her. And so he's choking her, quoting scripture. But then I guess Tess plays like a smart card, and she's like, oh, thank God you're here. Like,
Yeah.
I've been praying for you. And it's like, I've been his prisoner. And like, she plays into his delusion.
Right.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so at this point, we find out that Cahill says he is like Jacques de Molay. Like
Right.
he's like he thinks he's been reincarnated or something. So he's on this like mission from God. So Jacques de Molay, he was in the
Templar.
Knights of Templar,
Yep.
and they were like a faction in the Crusades. So they were like a military faction,
Right.
of like priests and I don't know, not good stuff.
Yeah, well, and eventually they had so much money. They got very wealthy, and a bunch of people owed them money. Essentially, they conspired to murder them all so they wouldn't have to pay their debts back. So, Templars are done.
Yikes.
So Cahill ends up leaving, and he's like, I'll find McLeod on
Right.
my own. Tess gets spared, which is good.
Yay. But she's also able to relay this information to Duncan,
Right.
which kind of enables Duncan to figure out where Cahill might be.
Yeah, and he figures out he's a Templar, and when he's talking about the Templars, he like says all that stuff you said, Kyle. But then he's like, hidden treasures, secret passages, like secret passages. That's the thing.
Well, they were part of what the justification for killing them was. They had like initiation rites, and there were all these kind of rumors about like what unseemly things they might be doing in their kind of cloistered
In their hidden passages.
So-
passages.
Yeah.
And
So their
secret
headquarters
rituals.
was in Paris. So that's like the clue.
Right.
And he's like, aha, like I'll go there.
So meanwhile, Cahill is waiting in a Templar outfit now.
He's got like full chainmail
Well,
on.
Yeah.
This was all just a giant struggle because they were like, oh, we need a way to give him a sword because
Right.
why else would he have one?
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah.
So they're like, oh, this guy decides he wants to play dress up
Yeah.
as like a
He's a
Templar knight.
cosplayer. Yeah.
And somehow he finds a functioning sword and a mace?
Yeah. And an axe.
And an axe.
Yeah.
He starts the fight with an axe and
Yeah.
then goes on to sword and mace.
Yeah.
So Duncan confronts him one last time. I guess I do appreciate that Duncan does, I think, try to explain the immortality thing
Right.
one more time to this guy. So
Yep.
maybe that's kind of Duncan's redeeming factor, because I gave him some shit for being like, I'm going to axe the guy. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, he does try again to explain like what the stakes are.
And this time he has threatened Tessa and knows.
True.
Yep.
They have a big fight. It is kind of I guess it's a fun fight. Like, it's cool
Yeah.
that there's like multiple weapons. It's lit really well.
Yeah.
Again, this location is cool because there's like columns.
Mm-hmm.
There's this big cross in the background. So Duncan ends up, I guess, stabbing Cahill and knocks him down this like well or something.
Yeah.
So then like a weird sick game of like whack-a-mole. Like Cahill's head comes up.
Struggling to like get out of this well.
Yeah, his head comes up and
Yeah.
then whoosh, and he chops his head off. I don't know if that sword is going through chainmail like at all. Like, I don't know how that works.
I tend to think so.
That's a lot of chainmail to go through to cut someone's head off.
I guess. I mean, it's not like people wore chainmail all over their bodies and still got dismembered and shit. I mean,
Did they get dismembered, or could they get like stabbed through it if like you broke a link or two, like to get the sword?
I think it was a thing that you could cut if you like swung as hard as you could.
All right, sword experts, write
Right
us. Yep.
Well, the other thing is this could have just been a costume that was. at
That's true. This is
Yeah.
some real clunky bullshit
Yeah.
fantasy cosplay crap.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I have some comments on this quickening that Duncan receives before we get into a larger issue here. Cahill, as far as we know, unless Keith's theory is true, Cahill has been an immortal for what, a few days?
Few days.
So this quickening shows us that the length of time you've been an immortal doesn't affect like the quickening you get, because this is a
Right.
big quickening.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
And I'm like, but he's only been immortal for like 3 days. Like, what power or information does he really have to impart on McLeod? And
Well, I
also,
guess-
McLeod's like holding his sword up in a weird way during this quickening.
Like, I kind of like in the quickening, like he falls to his knees. Like, I don't know, it seems to kind of take on the character of him a little bit. Like, it's
Wow.
got this like prayer element, I think, to it.
That's
Yeah.
a good point. Yeah.
So the biggest question mark on this entire thing, I mean, notwithstanding where did he get the costume, where did he get the sword, where did he get the mace, how does he know how to sword fight with any of these things in a way that's a credible threat to McLeod, because why would he have ever fought with a sword before? putting all that aside, putting it all aside, aren't they fucking on holy ground? What is going on here?
Yeah. I mean, according to what Keith said, this is his final resting place. And
Right. So at the very, it could be a church. This was supposed to be the Knights of Templar headquarters. So let's say this is just a business office. Maybe it's not a
just
church.
a regular castle
That they happen to put a giant cross in. Like, there's religious iconography all over this place. But let's say it's not really a church. But then, at the very least, it's a burial ground. Like,
Right.
So right there, that's
And
it.
I mean, a Templar, it's like a holy night.
Yep. So this is holy ground. What is happening?
Yeah.
I
Is it
do
because
not know.
Cahill doesn't know the rules?
But Duncan does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How did the writers let this happen? Like,
I don't know. My guess is we're just supposed to. I think we're supposed to buy in that this isn't holy ground, but that just doesn't.
There's
seem
a giant
is it
cross
like a
in the
museum? Is it like a museum? I
well,
don't
this
know.
is an.
But does that mean that like any church that admits like visitors, like, oh no, it's not holy ground anymore. This is converted into a place of learning?
I feel like I think on a much earlier episode I brought this kind of conundrum up. Like, what does justify holy ground? Like, there are, like, if you went to Greece, it's like, and went to some ancient ruins, it's like, well, it's not really holy. Like, no one believes that anymore. So does that ground cease to be holy? Or if this church, it's like, let's say it used to be a functioning church or something, and now it isn't, and now it's just a museum that holds relics, and like, does it lose its like qualifications as holy ground? I don't understand that. Like, I think that becomes like an odd issue.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of gray area around the line, but there is no question in my mind that this is over it.
Oh,
By
yeah.
like almost any definition of what would constitute holy ground, we're in it.
I guess
You know?
they just were like, we have to have the fight in this cool location.
To be
Like,
clear, it's a
but they could-
great location.
It is,
it's
but
super cool, but
it'd be nice if they could have moved the fight outside. Like, maybe it starts in here, they yell, maybe they start to get into it a little bit, because we've seen them before, like, at least clash swords on holy ground.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen that in the Road Not Taken.
Mm-hmm.
I think Duncan they
they
have like
spar,
they have
yeah.
a friendly sparring match on holy ground. So like, there's been some violence committed on holy ground, and it seems like maybe that's allowed. I don't know, but like, so maybe they could have started the fight, but like, for Duncan to like willingly take this guy's head on holy ground, I think that's where it's like,
what is it's
So
troubling.
Definitely write us about this one. Like, I think
Yeah.
this is a really interesting topic. Is this? Yeah, what is this? I don't know.
Doesn't make sense. And I didn't even think that didn't even occur to me.
I know.
I-
They tricked me. I kind of lost track of that too. I was like, oh yeah, it is holy ground.
Yeah. Well, I just think that this, like most of this episode, is just some hot nonsense.
Yeah.
At one point, Elaine says to Duncan, like, oh, like, how'd you get so smart? And he's like a rat going through a maze, I bumped into a lot of walls. And it's like, yeah, the dialogue in this episode,
Yep.
like a rat running through a maze, is bumping into a lot of walls.
Yeah.
Like, this episode was just clunky, and it just didn't deliver.
Yeah,
Nope.
like even that sentiment, like, oh, like, I've made a lot of mistakes before. Like, Duncan has never expressed that attitude. Like, Duncan is always, like, at least dealing with Richie, like, he never relates to Richie in that way. Like, you know, Richie, like, when I was a kid, I made mistakes too, and like, I used to fuck up, like, and it's like, now I learned. Like, he's always like, what you don't do. It's like,
Yeah.
you idiot. Like, I told you not to stay there. It's like, what? Like,
I told you not to light that guy on fire.
Richie, when I was a kid, I lit a lot of people on fire. And I learned, just don't do it anymore. So that's why I don't light people on fire. So
Yeah.
the end of this episode, after this quickening, is Elaine has like
Taken off.
She's
Yeah.
hasn't said goodbye, which is interesting. You know, she's, I guess, hopefully starting anew. She's just cutting all ties, I guess.
Yeah.
And Duncan's like, well, now she gets to be what she wants to be, which is an interesting theme. Again, like that theme has popped up in the past couple episodes a few times, which is
Right.
an interesting, like, Highlander theme.
It kind of contradicts the thing he was saying to Grace about, oh, well, you know what you are, and you can't
Right.
change it. And now he's like, you can pick what you want to be. You should
Yeah.
change it.
Change it on a dime.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's like the end of the episode.
They run through some pigeons.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they run away.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
And they literally run away to end this episode.
Yeah.
Which is everyone should follow suit. Run away from this episode.
this
What
episode's
do you
bad.
guys think of this episode? You guys don't like this
I
episode.
don't like it.
This
I don't
episode
like
is
it.
bad.
See,
it is bad.
This is weird. We haven't disagreed like this in a while. I like this episode a
Wow.
lot. Yeah, I like the villain. I think he's like really unhinged and Like, I think he's off-putting and weird. And,
That's true.
he's a real creeper. Like, he makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think the actor does a pretty good job. I actually really like this religious plot. I think this is an interesting way to tackle it. Although I do wish he just was not insane before before he became immortal. I wish he was kind of driven mad by not knowing how to cope with this thing, or his own other beliefs have clashed with this, and he can't make sense of it. I will admit it is a weird. There's some weird things to this episode, but the other thing
there's a lot of weird violence against women.
Judging
Judging of people. There's a lot of using computers as illogical plot devices. There's a lot of Batman logic and stitching together of things that have no connection to anything. There's a lot of random luck that sorts things out in the end.
I'm sorry, are you describing every Highlander episode? Another thing I do like about this episode is, well, a couple things. I do think this is this the darkest episode we've seen? I don't know. I'm trying to think what episodes are this point been this dark.
This is probably the darkest.
Yeah.
I mean, simply because it's a man murdering women.
Yeah, there's not a lot of light moments in this episode at all.
No.
It's really serious the whole time.
The lychee attack.
The lychee attack.
And the ball kick. They're the two lightest moments.
And then I do think this episode does a pretty good job of marrying some different storylines. Like we've had instances in the past where like Richie will have a B plot.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is this? Like, it has nothing to do with anything. And this is kind of nice because Duncan has this kind of random run-in with an immortal, and that plot gets going. And then at the same time, Tess is meeting up with her friend. And at some point, these two things kind of come together. And I don't know, I think it does a good job of kind of tackling a couple different plot points, but within the same story arc. Anyway, I don't hate this episode. So
I didn't like it for some reason. I don't know. It didn't sit with me.
I think my opinion's on the record.
Okay. So a couple behind the scenes thing, or just one behind the scenes thing. Again, Bill Panzer on the DVD has just an odd little thing he throws out there. It almost doesn't even have to do with this episode, but he talks about where immortals come from. He's like, oh, well, we don't know where immortals come from. And then he goes, maybe they come from the source. And then he just moves on. And it's like, this is the second time in these DVDs that he has mentioned the source. And I think someone on Facebook mentioned to us that this was around the time they were actually actively pitching the movie Highlander. What would that one be? Highlander 5, The Source, which we cannot wait to talk about.
Unfortunately, we will have to wait about 3 years.
Almost 3 years. But so I don't. It's like this thing is like in his head, and it's like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's upsetting.
Well, The Source is also a Jack Kirby creation. If anybody follows the New Gods characters, The Source is like where all the New Gods get their power from, or whatever. So that's interesting.
Crossover.
Highlander and Orion team up to battle Darkseid.
And the Kurgan.
That's right. Batman v Highlander, John of Darkseid. I don't know.
What's more powerful, the Omega Beam or Quickening?
I mean, it's funny that we're using this nerd voice, but you know the Omega Beam, so you know, kind of
maybe Granny Goodness, is that her name?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Jeez Louise.
Yeah, let's tease ourselves some more.
So anyway, I do want to read One Watcher Chronicle for. His name's Alfred, first name, Alfred Cahill.
Oh. Why does he need a chronicle for? Who chronicled him? How
also, who even found him? Who knew about this guy?
This makes no sense. I'm going to write an angry letter.
Here we go. This is what
the guy who was watching Mac knew about.
Oh, right. There you go. That's very good.
Yeah.
So here we go. Immortality is a relative thing. A new immortal has the chance to live for untold millennia, maybe even as long as the mythical mythos. Or maybe all he gets is another week. It's a crapshoot. Such was the immortality of Alfred Cahill. By all accounts, Cahill was a nutcase long before his first death. The man who raised him was some kind of holy roller revivalist preacher who used to beat Cahill as a kid. Cahill whacked his old man, then joined the RAF, which trained him as an SAS commando, where he became a nutcase trained to kill.
Jesus.
He saw action in Iraq and the Falklands, where he became quote-unquote a war hero. I don't know why that's in quotes.
Yeah.
Soon after, the RAF discharged their quote-unquote war hero when he had failed a psychological screening. He drifted to Paris, got a job as a security guard at the Templar house. That's why he's there?
I guess.
Yep. And wound up stabbed by a hooker.
As you do.
He awoke immortal and convinced that God had chosen him as his personal crusader. McLeod tried to talk to him, to teach him the rules, but Cahill didn't listen and instead went on a killing spree. McLeod had no choice but to stop God's chosen nutcase and end his brief taste of immortality.
Jesus. How many times are you using the phrase nutcase, too?
Also, if we think that this was, like, who knew about this guy, Duncan's Watcher, we'll find out soon who that is. Like, this was written by Joe Dawson? Like, what?
Is that in line with his
just picture it in his
style of
voice.
writing?
No! It's killed by his own nutcase. This is Joe Dawson.
This is crazy. So yeah, I guess that about wraps up this episode. But definitely write us in. So yeah, if you want to participate in Highlander Rewatched, send us an email about your thoughts on this episode or what you think of our thoughts, any questions you have, things that we want to talk about on the podcast. Send your emails to highlanderrewatched@gmail.com.
And force your friends to listen.
Yeah.
Make them listen to it too. Staple their earphones to their ears. Bring them into Highlander.
And rate us on iTunes.
Exactly. Yeah, go on iTunes, rate us there. We're on, I guess, all the podcasting platforms. So it shouldn't be hard for anyone to listen to us. Make sure to like us on Facebook. We're always posting funny clips on there, stuff we talk about on the episode that's relative. Also, another great topic you could write about is we're actually coming close to the end of the first season of Highlander. So we're about to tackle the first movie in between seasons 1 and 2. What do you want to talk about? What do you want to get out of that episode? Tell us what your,
send us your thoughts.
Send us your thoughts. What you want to hear us talk about. Like if you have any really interesting information about the movie, send it to us, and we'll definitely talk about it on the podcast. We're really excited to tackle the first movie. So we only have actually 2 episodes left. So we're really excited to get to those. I've been one of your rewatchers, Keith.
I'm Kyle.
Amen.
And join us next week for the episode Nowhere to Run. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Not even holy ground. See ya.
Leviticus.
I'm one of your rewatchers. I'm Keith.
This is Eamon.
I'm Kyle.
Awesome.
Sorry, I was looking at my tea.
I'm one of your rewatchers. I'm Keith.
I'm Kyle.
This is Eamon.
All right.
Get your shit together.